Good start. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Mercè Crosas. I'm at the Institute for Quantitative Social Science at Harvard University. And as probably many of you know by now, because I've been in the MOC workshop, I think, since MOC started, right, for the last years. Our institute, IQSS, started the Dataverse project about 12 years ago. And that's a project that, well, the Dataverse is a platform for building data repositories and enabling data sharing, data publishing, data archiving. And since then, we've been growing. And we've been not only having a repository at Harvard that holds many data sets deposited by researchers all over the world, but also having various Dataverse sites in different countries, about 34 or 35 now Dataverse repository sites that also are gathering data from the researchers. So at the Harvard one, we have 30,000 data sets as of now that are deposited directly to our Harvard Dataverse. This includes about 260,000 data files. There's been almost 5 million downloads, so people are using the data. And this is a great sign for what we're doing. Has an impact to other, not only the researchers that are depositing the data that can make it, that those data sets can be cited and make those available to others, but others are also using it. So that's the data sets that are deposited at Harvard. We have, you might see here, a number is 80,000 data sets total. So what happens is that we also harvest data sets from other repositories that many of those are powered also by the Dataverse software. So what I'm going to talk about today is that what we have now, how are we set up Harvard Dataverse in the AWS cloud, and how do we want to move that into the MOC, and what the benefits of this will be, and what would be in what stages we should, well, a proposed plan of how, what would be the stages to accomplish that. Oran mentioned earlier about this work, about, I think a few months ago in the Dataverse community with, we were having a discussion, some of us, about, it would be great that we really leverage all the cloud computing from MOC, all the great resources, all the work that is being done there for all these data sets that are in Harvard Dataverse, right? And how do you do that more efficiently? And with Oran's contagious energy, after 2 minutes, he was announcing, we're moving that to Dataverse, to MOC. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it together, and we're gonna make that happen. So then after that, we had to make a plan of what that will mean and what will give us and what we will give to researchers, right? So just that, going back then to where we are now, we have the Dataverse repository in AWS Cloud. You see here several boxes, but the most important thing is that we have a service layer, and then there is the metadata that is essential to understanding the data sets is in a database, and there are all these data files, right? And there are copies of the data files in Glacier, in the research computing at Harvard University. So that's the current setting, and then at the same time we harvest metadata, not the actual data files, but the metadata from many of the repositories that are also hosting data using Dataverse. So we will going to present 3 phases of what we could achieve. First, we want to make the data, just copy the data or have a replicate of the data to MOC. So we would allow then researchers that go to MOC that are using the resources in the cloud to have access to the data locally. We heard earlier this morning from Mark to Sigma about how the importance of bringing the data now local for close to computing, right? So that's the first step in doing that. But in that case, you still could download the data from AWS. It would be the primary source, still during this phase 1. But you could access it or download it from MOC as well. The second phase, much more interesting now, we have the AWS as the secondary site for Harvard Dataverse. And now there is a replica of the entire Harvard Dataverse in MOC, and those two sites synchronize both the metadata, all the data, application data and metadata from the database and the data files in both sites. So you can access directly the entire repository, interface with the services within MOC, be able to use that, the data sets locally to compute on them, also allowing for much larger data sets that we have now, that we can host now at our Harvard Dataverse, and allowing also for more higher sensitive data sets, right? For data sets that might need to be stored in a secure environment that MOC can provide. So during this phase, we would have to do some changes to the Dataverse platform that it would consist on having an authorization component that both the AWS, well, users coming from AWS and from MOC could use to validate, to verify that they have access to the data sets, and also having a way to synchronize the databases appropriately so the data can maintain, well, you can find the same data, right, from the same metadata from a place, going from one side or to another. One of the, I lost my, my time, but well, one of the important things though that we are adding redundancy to Harvard Dataverse, to access to the data, so we still want to maintain this AWS cloud. This could have become at some point another cloud, and that would be the effort that we would be doing towards the phase 3, where we really generalize or make that process of replicating Harvard Dataverse or any Dataverse repository into any other cloud much more generic. So in this case, what we have is that we want to enable researchers that might be using, for example, the Open Data Hub, or maybe in the future is the IBM Open Cloud or so, to be able to say, here, I want a replica of this Harvard Dataverse or any Dataverse repository, right? I want to put it in my cloud, whatever is a private cloud that I'm using, and I'm going to be working with data, depositing data to that Dataverse, and then when it's ready for release, I might push it back to the MOC or to the public Harvard Dataverse that host all the data sets that are shared by various researchers. So what we're allowing here in some ways, if you think of the GitHub model or the model of version control, right, we're allowing to doing a fork of the Harvard Dataverse. We don't need to have at that point all the data files actually in that copy, but whenever we need a copy, we need to access the data set in our cloud, in our computing or another research computing environment, then we can pull that data. But also we're creating new data sets, whether it is from existing data sets and secondary data sets that we have processed from the original data sets that we found in Harvard Dataverse, or whether are new collections of data sets that we've created and we put together and we deposit in our local Dataverse. And at that point, I mean, this is, maybe we push like a pull request, basically, and we bring it back to this public Dataverse repository. And that way, we're allowing to work in a collaborative environment before we're really ready to publish those data in a way that it's seamless, basically, to what we'll need to do to make that data available to many more other researchers than our collaborative group. So I think this will be a fantastic way to improve how we do cloud computing research, collaborative data science and making data sets more accessible and have incentives for doing so. Thank you.